All right. Thanks for that. Let me just recap on what I was saying here. Okay. Yeah. So yeah. So this we are here. So I am saying I was trying to defend abortion here. That abortion is not sin, but the approach I've used is incorrect, and it led me to some problems, as I've tried to explain. Because yeah, like I've said, this I'm using a natural story, Genesis chapter 2, verse 7, and it says, "Dust plus breath equal a living soul." And what I would do, I will take another story, trying to squeeze this story in here to say a dust, and then we see a child in the womb, and then plus breath when the child is born, and then a man became a living soul. But we can't do that. It's breaking the rules, because first this is a natural story. This is how I see it, at least. Because as we know, parables work. We have natural to and then spiritual, right? And I went to Ezekiel 37. We saw how God does it. He did it. He took a story of Adam and make application to show us how he created his church. This is what we see. This is a perfect example of natural to spiritual. He took the story of Adam, this model, dust plus breath, equal a living soul. And then God is going to say, okay, bones, sinews, skin together, plus breath from the four winds, equal exceeding great army. So, so this is how you do natural to spiritual, not the way I want to do it. Uh, yeah, and then sorry, and then I'm saying this is to approach this story morally is wrong. It's going to lead you to some problems, because even when we were given the midnight cry, this message of feminism, radical feminism, we were prophetically, this is how we approach this problem. We approach the problem trying to understand women's rights. This is how we were given this story. So long as you stay there, you are safe. But if we try to understand this issue other way, you're gonna get into some problems. So yeah, I'm saying the approach is wrong. Prophetic approach is the way to go. And if we do that, we focus on women's rights. And then this is where we will draw this conclusion that abortion is not sin. Because a woman has rights like everyone else on earth has rights. So the women have rights to choose what they want to do with their bodies. So we look at it that way. I hope I've tried to cover this, right? Um, okay, let's move on. Uh, X27. So what I'm trying to do here is to try to abstract the story.
And so some have tried to do that.
X27. Someone is talking. Uh, anyway, X27. This is a brief overview of a story or of a lesson that was done by Curtis recently. Uh, I'm not gonna do justice on this story. I know I tell you that up front. I will encourage everyone to go and study Curtis' series. I think he started 3 weeks ago, and he continues on that story. Try to support the story by Elder Terry. Yeah, so I found this story I just got interested to it. This is why I want to share. So let's do a review. Acts 27, verse 1 to 5, we know we have two ships in the story. Caesarea, the ship. Um, can someone check who's got that mic open? If you can mute the mic, please, because I don't want to leave this page. So the story, the ship begins from Caesarea. We know the ship of Adramyttium, and Caesarea, we know, and this is 19.
Tato, please can you mute?
All right, I'll to remove this now. Just bear with me here. If I'm finding it out. Just hold on, please. I don't know what happened here now. Is this? What's gonna happen if I'm afraid it's gonna kick me out. Sorry, people, I'm fiddling with this now. Yeah, let me start afresh and see here. I don't know what is happening now. English. Okay, let me see again. Phew. Wow. I don't know what happened here. All right, anyway, let's see. Okay, am I still audible? Just to confirm that, then we go.
Yes.
Can anyone confirm? All right, thanks. Caesarea, this is 1989. The Sidon ship will move to Sidon. This is 2001. It will move under Cyprus, the Midnight Cry, 2021, Myra, Sunday Law. Right. So this is the ship of Adramyttium. The story is going to be repeated again. Acts 27, verse 6. Alexandria, there's another ship now because that first ship will stop. That first ship will stop at Myra, right? But there's going to come another ship from Alexandria. And we say this is a good ship. And this ship, we know it's starting in 1798. Alexandria means the defender of the people. And then Myra, of course, it's going to go through Myra. Bitterness, this is October 22nd, 1844. Nidus, irritated needle. This is 1863 when the ship goes off course in 1863. So we know this ship we are talking about the institution of the United States of America, and we are talking about the Seventh-day Adventist Church. So yeah, Alexander in 1798. So how does United States defend the people? Through the Constitution, right? It says here the ideology of the U.S. Constitution is rooted in the principles of democracy, federalism, and individual rights. The Constitution's preamble preamble sets the tone, stating that the purpose of the document is to establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, right? Uh, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessing of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. So this constitution uh, is very important. It's how America will protect its citizens. Key principles of this constitution. Key principles is federalism. The constitution divides power between the federal government and the states, ensuring that no single entity has too much authority. So we need to get this from the beginning. The constitution will make sure, because there's two governments there in America, the federal government, the big government, small governments, the states. So the constitution will make sure that not too much power, not too much authority on one entity over another, right? Separation of powers. The constitution separates power among the legislative, executive, and judicial branches, providing checks and balances to prevent any one branch from dominating the others, right? Individual rights. The Constitution protects individual rights such as freedom of speech, religion, and the press through the Bill of Rights. Democracy. This Constitution establishes a democratic system of government where power is held by the people and exercised through elected representatives. So that's democracy. So this is the work of the Constitution. So because we're trying to see how does America protects the people. This is what we are doing. What are the influences? Who influences this? It is influenced by Enlightenment thinking, the ideas of thinkers like John Locke, John uh, Jacques Rousseau, and Montesquieu, uh, etc., shaped the Constitution's emphasis on individual rights, social contract theory, and separation of powers. Republican values. The Constitution reflects the Republican values, such as civic virtue, patriotism, and the common good, liberalism. The Constitution's protection of individual rights and its emphasis on limited government government reflect liberal ideas. So this is the Constitution in 1798. We saw how this Constitution protected the people there when uh, there were these alien. What do we call this? There were these alien. There were these acts, alien enemies act, alien friends act, and sedition act, which were enacted in America in 1798. So, so you can see if you go to this history, these acts were really trying to change. They were really trying to change the course of how America was built to do, because it was built to protect the people. But these acts, you will see that they were going against those values. But it was the Constitution. Through the Constitution, they used the Constitution to dissolve these acts. In 1801, these acts were dissolved. All right. NIDAS, 1863. We said the ship is going off course. So you will notice we are trying to focus on the United States of America, the external issues, not so much about the internal issues. So in 1863, the NRA, National Reform Association, was established in 1863, advocating the amendment of the Constitution to include language that will make America a Christian nation. Words like "in God we trust," also advocating for a Sunday law, according to A.T. Jones. So as early as 1863, they were advocating for Sunday law. So you will see America here uh, is really starting now to change the tone. They are no longer protecting the people because now they want to make a nation Christian, and they are redefining what America is now and what America can protect, because they want to make this nation now a Christian nation. So we are saying as early as 1863, you can see this ship is going off course now. So we mark the redefining of the ideologies of who the Constitution is going to protect, all right? So this is where it begins. The ship is gonna wander around the seas until Lassia, until they reach this place in Lassia. And we know this is 1989. Let's read Acts 27, verse 9. Now, when much time was spent, and when sailing was now dangerous, because the fast was now already past, Paul admonished them and said unto them, Sirs, I perceive that this voyage will be withheld, and much damage, not only of the lading and ship, but also of our lives. So we know this is Paul, this is this movement. 1989, they begin to understand all these issues, right? But we also want to know that in 1989, we will see the United States of America now starting this journey. And we are told up front that this journey is very dangerous. And yeah, Paul is admonishing them. This is when the United States of America, if you remember, because here we are. In verse 13, we know that it's going to talk about this south wind, these south winds which are blowing softly. We know this is this issue about the king of the south. The king of the south is going to be defeated. The USSR in 1989, 1991. After that, United States is going to be a sole power, or what is it? It's going to be this superpower nation now, no longer this uh, bipolar power, bipolar powers with the king of the south. Before 1989, you had these two superpowers, the USSR and United States of America. Now you're going to have United States of America as the superpower moving forward. Everything is good from 1989, but Paul has already warned us. In verse 14, we see a Euroclydon. A Euroclydon, we know this is the east wind, and we know this is 2001, the issues that go along with that, this east wind. And after that, there's gonna be a problem now in this journey. So Paul has already warned them here. So when you get to verse 21, it says, but after long abstinence, Paul stood forth in the midst of them and said, Sirs, you should have hearkened unto me, and not have loosed from Crete, and to have gained this harm and loss. And now I exhort you to be of good cheer, for there shall be no loss of any man's life among you, but of the sheep. Right? So Paul has got this insight that there's not going to be any loss of life except the sheep. Verse 23, for there stood by me this night the angel of God, whose I am and whom I serve. So the angel of the Lord is helping Paul here, and it is at midnight. And so we will say this is 2019. In 2019, Paul already knows that there's going to be shipwreck, and the shipwreck is inevitable from this point on. From 2019, there's no way this ship is going to be saved, according to Paul here. So what we want to say now is that, okay, I'm quoting Elder Tess here. I'm quoting Elder Tess on this uh, material she's done on the 1st of January 2022. The quotes are there, right? So Elder Tess says, excuse me, the transformation of the Republican Party. I'm not sure if we fully grasp the significance of what has taken place. And I would suggest a key turning point was in Trump's first impeachment, where they had to make a decision. Would they follow Trump, embrace his conspiracy theories, completely throw in their independence of a party to his cult of personality, or would they stay the conservative party they are, but distance themselves? I would suggest they took that final road when they chose Trump's side in the first impeachment over Ukraine. Accepting his conspiracy theories, then put themselves in the place where they had to accept his conspiracy theories about the 2020 election results, and they chose Trump on November 9, 2019, when they said that in that impeachment they wanted to pursue the whistleblower and Hunter Biden, right? So in those hearings, that's what they said. So according to Elder Tess, from 2019, uh, we see a turning point in the Republican Party. I'm not going to go through the impeachment. You can remind yourself of that impeachment, but it was to do with Ukraine, right? And Trump was supposed to be impeached in 2019, but they didn't. They sided with him. And so by doing so, they lost the party to Donald Trump. So all these issues started in 2019 at midnight, according to Paul, when he told them that they cannot save this ship now, right? So let's look at Quintus Fabius Maximus Gergis. This is 273 BC. In 273 BC, we are looking at the history between 2021 and the Sunday Law, and the increase of knowledge in that dispensation we have 273 BC. And 273 BC is 24th of June 2022. This is Dobbs v. Jackson, the case that abolished Roe v. Wade in 2022. And this is our increase of knowledge. So what do we see in 273 BC? We see an alliance between Egypt and Rome. So I'm going to try to move slowly here, but yeah, we know these things, but we are trying to remind ourselves with these things. You will remember that in 275, there was a war between the Romans and Pyrrhus. And Pyrrhus lost the war in 275 BC, the Battle of Beneventum, right? And that's 2021, if we make an application. And then we see Egypt making an alliance with Rome. The Egyptians, after they heard that the Romans have conquered Pyrrhus, this great general, the Egyptians went out to reach out to the Romans to make this alliance, right? So remember, we're trying to briefly, just to a brief overview of this study by Curtis. As I've said again, you need to go look at that study. It is very compact and detailed. So now we want to understand what is happening in America from the beginning, because you have these ideologies in America. Remember, we are trying to understand Egypt and Rome, how this alliance works. This is why we are here. But we have to start from the beginning, trying to understand what is happening in America. How are the dynamics? How is the politics work there? So in the beginning, we had federalists, and they were championed by Alexander Hamilton, if you remember. And Alexander Hamilton was advocating for this central government. And then on the other hand, you have the Democrats, and this is Thomas Jefferson. And Thomas Jefferson is after advocating for the powers for the power to the states, right? So right from the beginning, you have this battle, I would say, between this idea that we're gonna have a central government, the federal government uh, give powers to the central government, or we're gonna have the states having their own small governments running their issues. So this has been the debate ever since. You will remember when we were quoting the Constitution is here to make sure the checks and balances, because you don't want to put too much power on the central government. Also, you don't want to put too much power on the states. So the issue is there, right? Now, what happened on Dobbs v. Jackson, 24 June 22? So there was a ruling there, and you will remember even the wording there. The ruling was from the Supreme Court. Let let this issue we take it back to the states. If I can paraphrase what they said there. This issue of abortion has to be taken back to the states, right? So you will remember again that in order to reach that conclusion, there were two methodologies they had to use. There's two methodologies actually you have to use in order to interpret the Constitution. It's either you use originalism or you will use living constitutionalism. So originalism, it's really this idea of trying to go back to the context of when this constitution was written, and you will try to interpret the constitution uh, according to the context of when these things were written. But uh, living constitutionalism, on the other hand, is going to try to protect the rights of the people, or it says it acknowledges the fact that as time moves on, things changes. So people are saying there has to be amendments along the way because time is moving, so things are changing. So we will interpret the constitution according to the time or the dispensation in which we are. We are living according to the issues which are before us. That's living constitutionalism. So you can see these two approaches they use there at the Supreme Court. So unfortunately, they use originalism. Since you have these conservative judges there, and this originalism will favor the states. It says, let the states decide. This is what they are saying, right? Now, this is what Curtis is saying in his study here. Curtis is trying to prove that there's this alliance between Egypt and Rome. These are two entities, right, in the natural story. But now at the end of the world, we're going to make an application and say these are two ideologies, right? So these are two ideologies. So it's not something new. We do this in our movement when we try to make an application at the end of the world, and we talk about not really countries, uh, or those geographic places, but we talk about ideologies at the end of the world. So now we're going to say this Egypt we are talking about here, it is this libertarianism. So what is this libertarianism advocate? Libertarianism, they advocate for freedom, but you see this freedom without rails or without guards, this extreme freedom. These are the libertarians, right? Because the libertarians, you will know, they don't have a problem with abortion. They don't have a problem with abortion because they are trying to protect this idea of freedom, that you are free to do whatever or take any decision you want with your life. So they are advocating for that. And so we are saying this is this ideology, Egypt. You will remember also when we talk about Egypt, Egypt is the world, right? At the end of the world. So really we are trying also to understand this third entity, because you remember we talk about the threefold union. We talk about when we talk about the threefold union, you're gonna have what Revelation 15, the dragon, the beast, and the false prophet. This threefold union, we know who's the beast. The beast is Rome, and we know who's the false prophet. This is this apostate Protestantism. And now we are trying to understand this dragon, or we are trying to understand Egypt, or we're trying to understand, we would say maybe United Nations or spiritualism or all these synonyms, but we are trying to understand this third entity. This is what we are trying to do here, because we are going to say Egypt is coming together now with Rome. So we are simply saying these ideologies, whatever the ideology is of Egypt, is going to come together with Rome, Okay. Remember, we're doing all this in the context of 273 BC, this increase of knowledge from 2021 to the Sunday law. The increase of knowledge is at 24 June 2022, right? So yeah, so now what is Rome? Rome says, we know what Rome says. Rome says no abortion. We already know that this idea, this is this Catholic belief we know. Abortion is sin, abortion, no abortion. You know, we know this. And we also know that the apostate Protestantism is advocating for this no abortion, abortion is sin. This is what's behind that court case, Dobbs v. Jackson. The Protestants are behind it. We know this. But also now we have this entity, this third ideology, which we call it Egypt. And we said this is libertarianism. This libertarianism is going to come together with Rome or remember we talk about the ideologies here, with what Rome believes, with what Rome stands for. Remember the context is abortion. So the libertarians, right? The libertarians are saying they are advocating for freedom, you know. So when you advocate for freedom, so you are advocating that these issues should be dealt at the state level. You don't like the big government if you're a libertarian. You like this idea of small governments, the states. So this is why now this decision, we saw that there's this decision that said, let these cases be dealt at the state level. So the libertarians are good with that, right? But there's a problem because we were hoping that the big government is going to protect us or is going to protect the rights of women. This is what we wanted to do. So you remember that we said the Constitution, the work of the Constitution is to make sure that there's checks and balances on both sides. We don't want to give too much power on central government, you know, because otherwise you're going to end up having this monarchy, the king again. So this is why Thomas Jefferson was advocating for this anti-central government, anti-federal government ideologies, you know, to put checks and balances. So there's always this fight, you know, in America, that you don't want to put too much power on central government. Also, you don't want to put too much power on the states. So this is what we see at play now here, because the federal government was supposed to protect women, or they were supposed to protect the rights of women, these reproductive rights, the individual rights, because this is the work of the Constitution, to protect the people, individuals included. But now we see this decision now that says let the states let the states handle these issues. By doing that, you're gonna have to jeopardize the rights of women. You see, because you let these issues to the states have to decide whatever they want to do with this, and this is why now we have these problems in America. 1 in 3 of women are having problems. They don't have access now uh, in getting the needs they have in terms of these reproductive rights, abortion. So some will even say 3 in 3, but 1 in 3 women, they are having problems now because of this decision. Now, what we are seeing here, we are seeing a coming together of Egypt and Rome, these ideologies coming together. So this libertarianism, this freedom, and this freedom without rails, the gods, it's coming together now, is working together with Rome or with these people who are in favor of anti-abortion, who have this anti-abortion stance. So this coming together is going to be a disaster for women. And this is what happened in 2022. At least I'm trying to paraphrase what this study is trying to show. I hope it makes sense. But let us move on. So this issue of voting, now, there's this principle where if you want to understand the story, we should go to the context of the story. We need to get to the context, to stay in the context of the story. So this is what Cassis is going to try to do here. Now, we know that in 273 there's this name now, Quintus Fabius Maximus Gergis. So what do we get from this? Fabius, we get voting. Gergis, we get flood, right? So, and then we say it must be understood according to the context. So what's the context of the story? The context of the story is about the alliance, and it's about this alliance between Egypt and Rome. So the story is about this alliance, right? So if we make an application, we shouldn't move away from that context. Because in the natural story, Egypt makes an alliance with Rome, right? And then in the spiritual story, we're going to have to see these ideologies making an alliance. So we already defined these ideologies: libertarianism, no abortion, and that's Rome. So these ideologies, we see them making this alliance. So whatever the voting is going to be, this voting we are talking about has to be in context with this alliance. So this voting, we're not going to take it out of context, like, so we will say maybe, so voting has to do with, we are saying this voting has to do with alliance. Somehow this voting has to create this alliance, not choosing who wins. Maybe it's going to become clear as we move on. Let me try to, because I think this is the last slide. Let me try to move slowly here. So this voting, it's not going to be like maybe we are choosing, uh, just hold on. All right, so it's not going to be like we are choosing. Let me make sure if I got the correct wording here. We are not choosing between who's on the good stream or who's on the bad stream. We are not choosing, or we are not voting. We are not voting because we want to, because it's a test. I'm not sure if I'm putting this correctly. Uh, but what we are trying, this voting is supposed to be a mechanism which will establish this alliance. Yeah, I think this is what he's trying to say here. This voting has to be a mechanism which will establish this alliance, not to make to choose maybe who's on the bad side or in the bad stream, on the bad stream or in the good stream. So basically, to say it plainly, in November 5, people are choosing there. People are voting and they are choosing which side, or which side is the good side, which side is the bad side. And this study is trying to show that no, this voting has to be in line with the context of the story. So the context of the story is to establish the alliance, right? So whatever this voting is going to be, it has to establish this alliance. Now, to make an example of this, maybe it's going to come clear now here in Daniel 11, verse 40. Daniel 11, verse 40, we know uh, it is to do with the king of the south being defeated by the king of the north, at least Daniel 11, verse 40, part B. So this is where we would mark the USSR being defeated by the United States of America. He's going to come with chariots, with ships, like a whirlwind, right? But what was happening there? What was happening? So Curtis is saying, you will remember that we had the USSR was made up of countries, 15 countries, at least to be exact. And just like the United States of America, the United States of America is made of countries. So, USSR as well. So what happened in that war? Yeah, we know sanctions are going to be used, arms are going to be used, at least in the Cold War fashion. So, but how is the USSR is going to be defeated? The USSR is going to be defeated when these 15 states, one by one, they will decide to move away from this conglomerate of countries or from this union. And if we will remember, each government, each country had its own local government, and now in order for them to come out of this union, USSR, they will have to vote themselves out there. So this study is saying the vote we're talking about is the vote that is used to leave the union. It's the vote that is used when the countries are deciding to come out of this union, as we know, Ukraine eventually at the end and others. By 1991, all these countries have voted to leave the union. So this vote is the one we're talking about, because if you remember what happened, the United States of America was using information war in USSR to try to show to show these nations that, look, we have a better government on our side, this democracy. So the Americans were selling this democracy to these nations using information war, and they won the war because these nations now they're starting to believe this information, and this is why they will vote themselves out of the union of the USSR. So in that way, the king of the north has won this battle, among other things. So this is what the study is showing. It's showing now by these countries when they are voting to move out of the unity of the USSR, and now they are joining, or they are having this alliance with the king of the north, they are voting themselves into this alliance. So this is how USSR was defeated, through this vote, when they decided to vote themselves out of the USSR and having this alliance with the king of the north. This is why even now you see Ukraine today, there's a war in Ukraine. It is still that war ongoing. The Ukrainians, they want to join this alliance. So it is all about this alliance, this ideology, because if you join the king of the north, you are joining this alliance. This is what the study is trying to show. Now the study is showing that the king of the north, Daniel 11 verse 40, the king of the south was defeated by the king of the north in this fashion. And verse 41 will take us to the king of the north in the United States. This is how this is how the king of the north is going to defeat the glorious land using same tactics. So this voting comes in again. So it is not the people voting who's going to be the leader, Donald Trump or who, but we want to see this voting of a nation, voting to join this alliance. And so the conclusion of the story now is on July 18 at the RNC in 2024, on July 18, this is where we see now the Republican Party voting to join this alliance, this Trumpism. So this is where they took all their votes to join this alliance, or to, yeah, to, as we've read in Edita's word in 2019. When we talk about shipwreck, because it's the completion now in 2024, the Republican Party has sold themselves to this ideology, this Trumpism. And we know what is Trumpism. Trumpism was established, or was demonstrated at least in 273 BC, or in 24 July 2022, with that case Dobbs v. Jackson, this abortion issue. Let the states, what did they say? Let the states handle the matters. So, and we know that the results of that, is, you let the issues to the states, that is going to violate the rights of women. And so they were setting precedent that this is how this government is going to be run. And by nominating Donald Trump at the RNC, the study says this is this is yeah, this is this voting we are talking about, when they decide to vote to nominate Donald Trump. So this is where this alliance is made, because we are focusing on the alliance of these ideologies. The threefold union has made this alliance at the RNC, because the study focuses on that, not so much about what the people say, but the institution, as the United States of America. We know the Democrats, yes, we know, but they are always advocating for the good side. But this Republican Party, this is what we are focusing on now. Now the Republican parties, they've sold their party to Donald Trump, this Trumpism. So it means now the fall of the country has arrived in that sense. Anyway, I know it's too much what I'm trying to say here. Let me just hear one person saying, yes, I understand what you are trying to say, or maybe I don't get what you are trying to say. Can I hear someone say something?
Yeah, it's really a lot, like it's letting here. Um, I hear, I hear what you're saying. Just that it's just too much. It's too tight. It needs structure. Okay, for me to learn, to understand clearly, I need to see the structure, yeah, like the natural, the application and stuff. But I hear your point. I hear you. I haven't seen Curtis study. Thank you so much. I'll go back to it. But yes, I heard you.
Yeah, thanks, Letwin. Yeah, if this study can serve to, to put that interest to our minds, to follow, so that we can follow these studies, or to even to have a look at these studies, I think I would have done my job there, just to spark that interest to go to that study, and really, because it's a very long study. I think 3 presentations, if you really want to follow it carefully. Yeah, so it's a very informative study. So yeah, thanks, Letwin, for the comment. Anyone?
Yes,
So
like
yeah, so yes,
okay. Yeah, I think I also get the summary well and clear. And also looking at the concept of how institutions fall according to that pattern of those structures, we have seen that it takes a while on the parable of those ships. Damages can happen and institutions can still move, and it's not like overnight when the overturn happens. So I think it makes sense, even the step which the Republicans have taken, we can see that that is why we have to understand the context of this Sunday law, that it's a step towards the complete overturn. And when these are found, our central pillars are actually broken, it leaves us with the outcome that the fall of that institution or other institutions which are supposed to work in hand, it's inevitable. So yeah, it puts some clarity on the context also of voting, because I think we were overlaying general voting to this, but not specifically identifying which concept are we talking about. I think it's a good study to review.
yeah, no, really, it's a good study to review, and it came by surprise even to me, really, even when we talk about this voting, because he draws his conclusion from the context, because the context, it is Quintus Fabius Maximus Gergis, and he was the leader of that embassy to Egypt. So the whole context of this name, Fabius Maximus, is to do with this alliance that they are trying to bring in Egypt and Rome. So whatever, now when we go to the name now to try to see the symbol, or what maybe the name may tell us, it has to tell us on it has to tell us on something which is already there. It's gonna enlarge on this context. It's not gonna talk about something else. At least this is how we have to understand how we read according to context. So really, it was it was a good study to go through it, how he does it. It's really taking us back to the context. I'd like that, uh, and really first understand the study, and then we can try to draw all these conclusions from the context. So I really like that. So yeah, it's the context is alliances. This alliance between Egypt and Rome, and at the end of the world, we know this these alliances. We talk about ideologies now, not so much of these countries. These uh, ideologies coming together, right? So yeah, and now this voting we are talking about, it has to be along those lines, that this vote is going to establish this alliance. So he puts it nicely now when he talks about the USSR collapsed because of these countries. They put together their vote to come out of the Union. And so now, again, when the King of the North is done with that, he's going to go to the glorious land. Similar thing has to happen. This vote has to have something to do with you know this voting about this alliance or trying to establish this alliance, because the nations there in the USSR, they wanted to align themselves with the United States through their vote. Now we see the United States of America aligning themselves with this ideology, we call it Trumpism, through their vote, and they voted on July 18. So yeah, so this is the story. Any question? Any comment? If not, and then we will close with a word of prayer. Can I ask Milton to close for us, please, Milton?
Okay, let us pray. Dear God, we thank you for the Sabbath. We thank you for the time you've given us, set apart to study, rest, and increase in knowledge in terms of our growth as we live at the end of the world. We continually ask for a double portion of grace that we may continue to have the zeal and interest to study, that we may understand the events around us and make choices that are in line with your will and within your kingdom. As we continue in these hours, we pray that we may bless all the meetings around the world and touch the mouth of all the speakers. May their effort bring each and every soul closer to you in a special way. And we pray that we may also be refreshed as we enjoy these hours each and every way. This is our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Okay, thank you very much. Let me just stop. Let me just stop recording here.